Hey everyone, and welcome to the BCSS High School League of Legends Finals. I'll be one of your casters for this evening. My name is Locus, and this is Ponce. How you doing, Ponce?
Oh, not too bad. A pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me in for one of these things again. We're looking forward to the finals for the 2021 and 2022 championships. It's going to be, of course, a best of three between Pine Tree Secondary and Seaquam. Hopefully you pronounced that correctly. I do believe it's something along those lines. Seaquam is in the building, so thanks for joining us. Do appreciate everyone coming in, and hope everyone has a good time for the League of Legends games that are going to be coming up very shortly.
Yeah. So I believe we do have the lobby already spun up, so I imagine we'll be jumping into Champion Select pretty soon here. And yeah, here we have it. So I believe we have Pine Tree on the left and we have Seaquan on the right.
Yeah, that is correct, yes. The names do seem to match up. Pine Tree is considered the home team at the moment, so they had the choice of sides. They seem to have elected blue side and Seaquam on the red. Now, next game, they will be allowed to swap if they so choose, so we'll see how that plays up. We got bans coming in already. The original first ban of the day is going to be an Ornn, a relatively popular pick on the top side. So not entirely sure if this is a targeted ban yet. I doubt it, simply because he is a very common champion in the current meta, if you will.
Yeah, does a little bit of everything, and does a little bit of everything pretty damn well.
Surprisingly damaging, given how durable it is. Really great initiation with the ult. Not just initiation, you can kind of save a bad situation with it as well. Always good to consider the offensive and defensive applications, very champion, and their abilities.
Yeah, we're also seeing the Zillion ban from the red side there, and the Jarvan ban now. Getting that early game jungler out of the way there, and then that Zillion, that either mid lane or support, very annoying to deal with. So I don't blame the ban there at all.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy playing a Zillion myself occasionally, not as, in terms of like a main or anything like that, but a very, very annoying character. And I think people underestimate, essentially, I almost like to consider annoying factor like a stat on the character, like offense or defense or mobility, because an annoyed enemy generally doesn't perform as well as they'd like to.
Yep. There's a certain amount of that kind of champion where you see it and you're like, oh, okay, Zillion's low, like this is where it's time to go in. And then that overextension into that area will lead to bad things for your team. And a few more of those champions, actually. Shen, another champion where you might think you have an opening on that team, and suddenly there's a Shen ult coming in, and they have a 400, 500 health shield and a giant tank in front of them.
That's always an unfortunate thing to run into. And I believe the last thing I was doing commentary for, I kind of mentioned this point previously, but Shen is an interesting character because a lot of the time I think teams tend to over-rely on the possibility of the ult for saving them, and they overemphasize split pushing. And I think people kind of treat it like he can always show up, but there's always that opening, that window where a team can get in. Of course, we're not going to be seeing that as he was banned. We're already into picks here. Of course, we have a Jinx on the side of Pine Tree, a Xayah on the side of Seaquam. So AD carry initial picks for both teams.
Yeah, that's a lane that I imagine we're not gonna be seeing too much, depending on the supports. Both of those picks are pretty safe ADC picks, which is why we're seeing them at the early portions of this draft here.
Yeah, maybe some AD carry specialists might disagree with me, but I don't see, at least from an AD carry perspective, like quite as much volatility in terms of the counter ability, or hard counters and that sort of thing. So, of course, we're moving into other lanes here. This is an interesting pick for me personally. Mordekaiser. I did have a chance to speak with some of the players here on the part of the Good Samaritan. He is, I believe, a Mordekaiser main, he said, in the jungle. So kind of an unusual thing there, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do with that.
Yeah, that's a pick I can speak to myself, because that's one of the champions that I really like to play, specifically in the jungle as well. His clear time is actually fantastic, and he stays pretty healthy because of all the spell vamp and healing that he has. The ganks are a little bit lackluster, but if he meets another jungler somewhere in the jungle, and they elect to fight and actually 1v1, it will go poorly for the other jungler.
I can imagine that being a very unpleasant prospect for anyone on the receiving end of that giant two-handed mace. I know he's an excellent duelist, so it's really why I guess you see him in the top lane so much as that sort of juggernaut archetype. But yeah, that showing up in the jungle, it sounds very painful.
All right, and then we have both these bot lanes locked up now. The Jinx Lulu, that is a pretty scary bot lane. if you're thinking about ways to turn that Jinx into a hyper carry, the Lulu is definitely the way to do that.
Yep.
But then the Leona as well. I can't imagine it being very easy to catch a Xayah with her between her ult and all of the Leona peel that's going to be coming out here. So
definitely going to be, I would imagine a relatively safe AD carry, but we're talking about that, or rather, I guess I was talking about that annoying factor here, my weird, off tangents. I've mentioned Lulu in the past as well. She's one of the few things I consider her more annoying than Zilean. That is just a very frustrating character to run down herself, but also anyone that she's enhancing with her abilities. So we'll see if champions like Leona or Mordekaiser can lock her down and just essentially pin down a very, very slippery champion.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced pulling Lulus into the Death Realm and being like, okay, this is how we get this Lulu, and then getting polymorphed and having, a million slows on me and then not ending up able to doing a whole lot. So,
yeah.
Seeing some mid lane bans here out of the red team, I'm assuming, with that Sylas and that Ahri. So the champions that we have left for both teams, I believe, are the solo lanes, those mid and top. So we're starting to see some target bans coming out for those roles specifically.
It's possible we might have just kind of a Graves doing something really weird, but I doubt it. It's most likely simply the solo lanes that are left here. And the final bans are just pretty standard stuff, nothing outside the realm of normalcy here. So I imagine they're more generalist bans as opposed to specialized, I know what you do, this is you're getting out here kind of thing.
Speaking of that too, it looks like that's actually a Diana and a Kayn. I imagine those are jungle bans on the blue side, so they might not be aware that could be a Mordekaiser jungle.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, the reason I know is because I have some inside information here, so I hope I'm not leaking anything and, balancing or tipping the scales of balance at the moment, but here we have a Tam Kench. I like that character. How about you?
I mean, he's very fun to play, very fun to watch, very not fun to play against with the amount of CC and just the amount of damage that all of his auto attacks do. Doesn't seem like a character with that much damage, but you come up against him in a fight in the wrong way, and you will find your life leaving you very quickly.
Certainly. He fits into that category of champions that's, I think he's very easy to underestimate. The sort of tanky, not even quite Juggernaut or Bruiser tier, but they have a surprising amount of damage, especially to get ahead. You think you're kind of trading with them casually, and then suddenly you're gone. I think things like Tam Kench, or really, to a degree, the new Volibear as well, but like the older Volibear, where he just bite you. Yeah, I think he's just really got to watch out for.
Okay, so rounding out with Vladimir versus Swain in the middle lane, and then Set versus Tahm Kench. Both of these teams are very melee focused, or very short ranged. So I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of fighting this game.
It's going to be a bloody affair, I imagine. That looks just like a fascinating mid lane matchup there with the Swain versus Vladimir. Endless sustain. We're going to see sort of a battle of attrition, essentially. See who gives up first or who loses a bit of concentration. Both those characters, both from a team fighting context and a laning context, are just going to sit there for very, very long periods of time. So I'm really interested to see how that one goes. League of Legends has always had kind of an interesting, almost contentious relationship with Sustain. And currently Sustain seems quite popular. Its popularity kind of goes up and down over the years, but right now I'm seeing a lot of Sustain all over the place at sort of every tier of League of Legends. So I think that might be an interesting fight to watch going on there, and see who buys some anti-healing technology first.
Yeah, I imagine both teams are going to be looking for that relatively quickly. Even talking about Tahm Kench healing or Set healing, like there's a lot of champions on both of these teams that have that healing available to them. When you're thinking about these two team comps and what's going on between the two of them, what do you feel like are the keys to success for either of these teams?
That's a good question. Maybe you might like this answer, but I'm actually really curious to see how this jungle plays out exactly. I played Mordekaiser myself in the top lane a few times, very rarely in the jungle. Maybe one or two times as sort of a silly gimmick and solo queue kind of thing. But, Graves is no slouch himself, certainly. He can fight back. It might be a dangerous prospect with a Mordekaiser. And obviously, jungle is not it's quite as isolated as I think people think it is sometimes. A lot of it has to do with lane pressure and who's doing what for you and that kind of thing. But if they kind of meet out off on their own, and assuming both teams are up to the task of following what's going on around in the map and that sort of thing, I'm really curious to see how that exactly pans out. Mordekaiser obviously, even if he doesn't do very well, can come back quite easily later on as well. So something to consider.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those two junglers play around that first scuttle crab that spawns. When you look at that mid lane matchup between the Vladimir and the Swain, I imagine the Swain will have some push priority there, at least in the earlier levels. Vlad doesn't have the greatest AoE early until he gets, that more levels in his E, which doesn't usually happen till later on. So we might see some early jungle duels where that Swain is able to move forward just a little bit faster. But if the Mordekaiser happens to catch the Graves out when he doesn't have those stacks of his grid available, it could be rough for Graves.
Doesn't seem like an enviable situation. I know you mentioned Scuttle. I kind of miss when, maybe I'm weird here, but I miss when Scuttle used to give more EXP.
Yeah, it's something that is almost like more formality now, it feels like, where it's like the junglers will still go for it and then will still end up being scraps and stuff around it, but it feels more like an honor thing than like than, it actually being that influential on EXP and gold. So
making a statement as I'm the better jungler, I got this Scuttle, never mind it gave me, 2 EXP or some crap, but...
Yeah, and with how fast you can take it too, by just smiting it immediately, having it drop down to like 200 health and then like autoing it twice. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Both of these junglers, though, will clear very, very quickly. I imagine we'll see both of them full clear before that first scuttle spawns. Both of these junglers with incredibly quick clear times.
So we were kind of earlier also talking about how both these teams seem like they lend themselves to rather... I don't know, slug-tastic, if I might make up a word here, where they just probably, maybe brawling the whole time is not exactly the correct term for it. They do have options. So that's why I'm actually personally curious to see how the Lulu is going to fit into all this. Like, just that note of doing something a little bit different compared to Seaquum's Leona, I believe it was, who's going to more fit into that sort of mold. You can kind of go in, just really make things messy and, tank things up, lock people down, that kind of thing. So...
Yeah, when I think of both teams, actually, it feels like their ADCs are going to be pretty well protected. On one side, you have, like, the Set Graves, I believe Set Graves Swain, and, like, I'm imagining those three standing in front of your ADC. You're not going to get very far, especially when you add in the Lulu protection there. But then on the other side as well, like, it's a Xayah, and you're going to have to walk past a Vladimir, a Mordekaiser, and a Tahm Kench.
Certainly.
Like... You are not getting to these ADCs. So depending on how those ADCs are able to position, where they're allowed to put themselves on the map, and in those team fights, that could be very influential as well.
I'm wondering personally how it's probably going to get used both ways, I imagine, based on the context, but how the Mordekaiser ult is actually going to be used in those sorts of fights. Is it going to be prioritized in a defensive sense or an offensive sense? Rush someone down and be like, oh, AD carry's getting bared down on by the, let's say, Tahm Kench or something. Let's just get him out of there kind of thing. So
the Mordekaiser ult in combination with challenging smite can be pretty scary, where, like, you don't even have to hit a lot of your abilities because those auto attacks with the on-hit damage from challenging smite and the on-hit damage in Mordekaiser's kit just allows him to walk some of those champions down. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Take out all requirement for skill. I'm sure everyone knows how to use their characters, but there's a quality in and of itself to just be able to say, we're going to make this consistent. I don't need to actually hit anything. You're going to die regardless.
Yeah. And we are into the game here. So we got Pine Tree yet again on the blue side and Seaquum on the right side, or on the red side.
Yeah, just to quickly go over the roles here, we have Akar topside, Kemson in the jungle, Astrolith in the mid lane, Squishy bottom side, working with Bamboos, Seaquum. We have Orisa in the top lane, Good Samaritan in the jungle here with his Mordekaiser pick, which we've talked so much about, S6 Bad Woman in the mid side with the Vladimir, and at the bottom we have Ninju, I believe his name is spelled backwards, if I recall correctly. I had a little discussion with him, working with Geach in the bot side with the Leona, who is their main support. Shout outs to Snazbaz, who I do believe is in the building. He's the support substitution, so thanks for showing up. Maybe we'll get to see you on the stage one of these days. I look forward to it.
Yeah. So we're seeing a pretty standard start here from both teams, just kind of lining up on the jungle, getting some wards out, recalling, swapping to a sweeper for the Graves, and for the Mordekaiser for both of those junglers.
Nothing too exciting or strenuous going on at the moment. Both teams perfectly content with starting this off in a slightly more even fashion here. So no crazy level 1 fights, as the jungle camps will be spawning in about 3 seconds.
It also looks like most of these characters are taking the pretty standard runes for their champions. I'm not seeing anything weird there, besides maybe the Aerie on the Xayah being a little bit non-standard. Or just, you could argue, for like Lethal Tempo or something else. And then the only other one is maybe the Graves Dark Harvest. You might take like Fleet. But like all of these are pretty reasonable summoner takes here.
It was Mordekaiser starting with both camps on that side there. So he's actually fairly potent on the initial pull in jungle. And someone who plays that, I guess you're familiar with it, but it looks interesting to me. It's sort of a foreign territory to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, if you just take a quick look at the minimap, like you can see that Mordekaiser is already starting to path towards those wraiths, or those chickens, just getting done those wolves there already, and it's only about 2:15. But we've got a fight here in the bot lane. Siaquam with the first level 2. Going to get that flash out of the Lulu, but not a whole lot else.
Yeah, Bamboo, he does get out, but you always have to keep in mind that does burn a flash, a very important resource down at the moment. So going to have to watch out for Leona's ability to aggress and just jump on you, because Lulu's, slippery, but not a lot you can do in terms of gimmicks this early on.
Oh, Swain getting a little bit low here in this mid lane.
Yeah, action all over the place. There was a pretty good duel in the mid side, which seems to have petered off at the moment. Top side's brawling really hard. Both players very early, and there's that jump.
Yeah, without a flash there, I can't imagine Lulu's going to be making out. No, first blood going to the Leona.
Always a bit unfortunate when the supporter takes the kill, especially as the first blood, but a kill's better than no kill, certainly. And it's better to always ensure that the kill happens. If you're not 100% certain if you're going to get it, just make sure it goes down. Now, granted, in that context, I imagine they really could have prioritized the AD carry if they wanted to, but that's a bit of nitpicking.
Yep. Putting out a little bit damage there on the Tahm Kench, making sure that he doesn't feel 100% comfortable farming under that tower, but he's a pretty beefy boy. He'll sustain up here.
Well, there's an interesting fight going on here. What do we have?
Ooh. Yep, Mordekaiser hits that E. You got to get out of there.
Yep, another flash burned. Good use of the blast cone. Oh, there it is. There's the scuttle we were talking about here. All right, we declared it. Siaquam wins.
Yeah, I mean, the Set and the Vlad actually both having that lane priority there, both moving over and being ready to take that fight and help Mordekaiser take that without too much trouble. So good moves there from Siaquam.
Yeah, certainly good job paying attention to the map for that. It's going to play out like that. Now, certainly it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Bad Woman there had to essentially ensure, or rather was leading up to that by getting Astrolift there a little bit low, so on the Swain he wasn't quite as confident in backing things up. So always good to see people sort of setting things up as opposed to just simply reacting.
Mm-hmm. The tier start for Swain too. I imagine that Astrolift isn't too worried about giving up a little bit in the early stages here, in order to be able to stack that up and get to that late game kind of terror that Swain can become.
Yeah, he's playing the long game, or as Swain says, he's 5 steps ahead of you. Or at least he used to say that. Did the new lines, did they include that one still?
Not that I remember.
Oh,
that was a cool line, though.
Yeah, it was. I'm a fan of the old Swain, personally. I actually, one of the few reworks that I like the old version of compared to the new one. Not saying he's bad. I've actually been experimenting with it the last week or so, personally, but still like the old one. But I'm just grumpy.
With the E that was just the damage over time, the little bolt.
You click on someone and they're just taking damage for a while.
Yep. Between that and the crow, yep.
I can understand why it's not in the game anymore. The league's trying to move away from that style if you click on someone and there's no counterplay, but I like it when my opponents don't have counterplay.
Yep, there are definitely still a few champions like that are kicking around.
No.
Don't see it quite as often now. It looks like in the mid-top and the jungle that Siaquam is taking a little bit of a lead here. Not a huge amount, but moving up about 10-15 CS in both of those solo lanes. And we got another fight here in the bottom lane. Lulu still with no flash.
Well, mid lane, is Swain going to survive there? He took I do believe he's okay. He's going to be able to just sustain on. He has approximately 10 hit points. I estimate it here. But certainly on the bottom side, it looks like that sort of Leona's ability to sort of aggress early on, and Bamboo's inability to really do too much about it on an early game Lulu. It seems like a pretty frustrating thing to deal with. Hopefully Bamboos is able to scale out of that and get to that point where Lulu essentially gets away from everything. But it takes time to get there. And a very good job for Sequum to... I mean, I'm sure they know it. Obviously you want to win regardless. But anyway, we've got another fight going on here.
Oh, yep. Actually taking those little plants, slowing Graves down and not allowing him to kite away, and he will die to that Mordekaiser.
Fight going on here. Oh, they're actually fighting back this time. Lulu managing to keep herself alive. She should be able to just barely win this duel here, even as just a support.
On 1 health. Oh, does get the Glitter Lance, which will seal the deal there. So yeah, fighting all around here for a few seconds. Might have a quick second to catch our breath here. It's actually huge that Swain was able to get that kill without taking Ignite in the lane. I believe it was a little bit assisted with the turret there. But it definitely feels good when you're able to get the first kill in the lane without actually having to take Ignite.
Yeah, especially since they're in like such a sustain-centric matchup. Just doing it straight up without Ignite is perhaps a statement there on the part of Astrolift. And of course, on the bottom side, we did see a kill coming in from Bamboo as opposed to the AD carriers. And obviously, the support was all that was left. Not ideal, but supports are important too. They need money. They're people.
This is interesting. Tahm Kench electing to take that fight and to stand behind Set. Looked very confident in the ability to take that fight, but then ended up getting ulted and having to just walk on out.
It didn't come out too good in that, but never mind. Here we have Kempson coming in. Is he attempting to... No, that's probably just going to peter out. It's not enough steam behind that train.
Yeah, that Graves still level 5, but the fight is breaking out the top lane. Ignite goes down on the Set, and he gets eaten. Going to let him tick down a little bit and get that last grasp proc to finish the deal.
And of course, those DOTs are going to be, they keep ticking while you're eating. So...
Yeah, and that's a really good way to reset that grasp proc too. Wait that 2 or 3 seconds after you use the first grasp proc to get that second one once they come out of your belly.
It's always a very frustrating experience with you just get eaten and you're sitting there and you know you're going to die. And get this over with.
Yeah, especially like frustrating when you're playing against a tank like Tahm Kench and all he has at that point is a Bramble Vest. And it's like, you really just built a Bramble Vest, now you can 1v1 me, but... yeah, negating that healing, that regeneration from Set's kit is very crucial.
But, of course, Set is a capable juggernaut himself, so hopefully, at least from his perspective, he'll be able to come back from that one.
Yeah, I mean, watching the Mordekaiser jungle there for a second, I'd just like to point out that he has 76 farm at 9 minutes. That is incredibly quick for a jungler.
Oh, yeah, that's the most in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, highest amount of farm in the game with that added kill as well from finding that Graves the one time. We are going to have a big Mordekaiser on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, he's a character that can come back from behind. So you can just imagine when a character can do well when they don't have much money, how well are they going to do when they have a lot?
Yes. We're seeing the dive here from the Vladimir. Makes it look easy using that pool to avoid the turret aggro. He's going to get the kill and get out scot-free.
Perhaps a little bit of overconfidence on the part of Astrolift there. He knew he was fairly low, but very specifically elected to stick around, and it cost him there. Of course, Badwoman using the Ignite, so that's not going to be available for, most likely the subsequent fight. It's a good bit of harass coming down there. Well, actually, no. Tanky 80 carry there in Ninju, but...
Yeah, looks like going for maybe the Eclipse first? On
Possibly.
Items?
I think so.
That'll make it a little bit hard to push the Zaya out of lane, having that life steal and allow her to kind of farm on her own a little bit here, while the Leona is taking a quick trip around the map, seeing if there's anybody who is sleeping a little bit. But Pine Tree is going to be a little bit careful, knowing the Leona's not in the bot lane.
I do like the idea of just people who very aggressively use Hextech Flash, just are not afraid to use cooldowns. Just go around the map making things happen. Even if you don't actually accomplish anything with it, just you put the fear of God in them, essentially. It's like, oh, this person is going to use their cooldowns. You always have to just be wary of that, which is an interesting sort of dichotomy, where sometimes some players, you fear that they hold on to abilities, and then in other cases, you kind of always have to watch out what they're going to use it immediately, sort of things. It's interesting mind games.
Mm-hmm. The Tom Kench asserting some dominance there. Vladimir might be a little bit too deep here. Doesn't have his jungler around. His jungler's in the bottom lane. He's going to walk right into turret. Oh, and the Lulu does tick down.
Oh, did Vladimir grab himself a kill there, didn't he? Oh, no, he didn't.
No. Graves went over to do his chickens, and Astrolift says, I don't need the Graves here. I can 1v1 you on my own. I imagine the damage from Graves to start that off definitely did help, but finishes the job on his own there.
Very, very good route by Astrolift, actually. He landed a max range E and just managed to barely catch out Bad Woman, who was perhaps pushed up slightly too far, but definitely a nice skill shot on the part of Astrolift, so well done.
So yeah, the game's looking pretty close here in the at the 12-minute mark. We're 1 kill apart. We're about 3k gold difference with that first tower coming through and that dragon, as well as some of that little bits of farm difference. Top lane evening out a bit here. The mid lane about 25 for Vlad, but very much could go either way here.
It's actually interesting. It's not the biggest gold difference in the universe, but it's not insubstantial either. I figured, looking at the scoreline, it would be a bit closer than that, but yeah, that first tower actually is just adding up quite a bit, I suppose. Interesting. There's some aggression here.
Oh, Lulu without the flash again. Is going to get stunned, is going to get pulled into the Death Realm, gets rooted by the Leona root as it happens, and there's only so far you can run. Mordekaiser will find you.
Yeah, so we were talking about earlier, the lack of counterplay, you just die when you're standing next to him. So,
yeah, he has his Rift Maker, by the way. He's had it for a little bit because he's been out on the map for a tiny bit already, but yeah, 12-minute Rift Maker out of that Mordekaiser.
And unfortunately, Lulu on the receiving end of that. Bamboo having perhaps a bit of a frustrating game. We're talking about the character being frustrating, but being frustrated himself at the moment, it seems. Hopefully, he's able to pull himself together and show us what that Lulu pick is capable of doing. Graves just very quietly farming. But a slight lull, and people pinging in the mid side. So we'll see if this turns into any sort of fence on the mid lane, but
seeing that Xayah start to move around the map and see if there's any more turret plates that she can munch on. Isn't going to find too many there in the mid lane. We don't have too long before those turret plates will go down for the remainder of the game. Leona engaging. Might have bit off a little bit more than she could chew. Leona is tanky, especially with those 3 kills, but not quite tanky enough. Graves is going to get himself out of there. And looks like they're going to disengage for a moment, but the dragon is up, so those health bars do matter right now.
Yeah, and they're going to find themselves a player down. Of course, this early in the game, Leona is going to be respawning already, so Geach will be back shortly. We'll see if that even matters, as both teams are very aggressively trying to grab the dragon here, and is ultimately grabbed by Mordekaiser.
Mordekaiser, yep, the extra damage on that Q. Swain is going to walk in. He's trying to take down the Xayah, but the Xayah ult will completely avoid that, and Jinx left alone on the back line is going to make it out.
Yeah, that was a bad situation, turning into a worse situation for Pine Tree there, as they lost some members on top of the dragon. Also, noteworthy once again that Bad Woman's Ignite was used on Swain immediately, so Astrolf not able to sustain through that fight. Swain's sustain is very significant, but if you can get something on him that's going to prevent it, he's, especially at this stage in the game, he's still going to go down relatively quickly.
Yeah, and on the side of Pine Tree, no grievous wounds yet, besides out of that Tom Kench in that Bramble Vest. And notably, not having TP or a way to get down to that fight means that lifesteal from the Xayah and the drain from the Mordekaiser and the Vladimir, there's a lot of healing there that's going uncontested.
It's definitely something that Pine Tree is going to have to be paying attention to. It's an interesting thing that all teams at this level usually recognize that you need that sort of anti-healing grievous wounds sort of thing, but a lot of it comes down to the timing in which you do it, and you got to just get a feel for it. It's like, okay, we need it now. Especially before anything too catastrophic happens.
Ooh, Tom Kench with that Frostfire Gauntlet, immediately getting that power spike and saying, I am going to fight you. And Set forced to burn that flash to get out safely.
Yeah, at least there was a good reaction there to see the Q coming there and avoiding the tongue. And I feel like if that had landed, it might have been a bad situation for Usira. But, of course, that is another resource down.
And yeah, Jinx with no flash, no cleanse, just getting caught out by that Proto Belt. Yeah, maybe a little bit less safe than I originally thought in Champion Select.
That's not a great sign for Pine Tree when someone, never mind that, we have another fight going on here. Nice job by Leona.
Yeah, flashing over the, or I guess Hex flashing over that wall. It looks like they're trying to chase the Graves down on the behind the tower. Vladimir isn't going to step quite that far forward. Pool not available anymore.
Ultimately, nothing else coming from that fight for the time being, although Bad Woman and Yinju still looking for something. Never mind, Swain just blows up. All right. A sequence of events there that bode ill for Pine Tree. As originally we saw, of course, Squishy just getting blown up out of nowhere. I think we both thought she was relatively safe there, but that's the interesting point. When you think you're safe and the enemy team can do something about it, that really speaks to a potential flow issue of the game. So Pine Tree, I mean, I suppose there's two schools of thought to this, where it's either you do something right now to change things, and you're really confident in your ability to do it, or just sit back, let things kind of, calm down a bit, play the long game. We'll see which option they go with.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to get this dragon, but Ocean Dragon with that much healing on your team already might make Grievous Wounds just completely... it might overheal the Grievous Wounds. As we're going to see another fight here. Tom Kench going in, hiding in the bush. Set's going to use that ult to try and get away. Is going to get eaten again by the Tom Kench and will finish the job.
And grim prospects on the top side here. Usira's ult with the set, it doesn't really even do anything right now. Tom Kench is too tanky, and seems to have the run of it up there. If they're going to stay in that top side, which incidentally both towers are still up, I think he's going to need a bit of assistance if he's going to try and fight back against the giant catfish.
I mean, yeah, that would be a great sort of reprieve for Pine Tree, being able to get a turret, get some of that objective bounty here. Might be exactly what they need to put themselves back into this game.
Yeah, even out that gold title or gold amount a little bit here. Graves getting very low.
Two-person Leona ult is going in, and Graves is definitely going to die. Lulu forced to use that flash, but will make it out alive, and Jinx as well will just slowly walk out of that one. Quite a few members at very low health. Swain here is in trouble. That Herald is going to be coming down. They've got 3 members surrounding the turret. Is going to pop the ult, but doesn't have enough time to drain any health with it or get much accomplished. So.
Another immediate use by Bad Woman. He's just on the ball doing that. He does not want to see what Swain is capable of in terms of any sort of sustain. You could argue it was a bit excessive maybe, but I'm going to say, yeah, just better safe than sorry when dealing with a Swain. It's also, again, I've been talking about bad signs, which, hold on a second, we got ourselves another fight here potentially.
Low health there on the Vlad, but the Jinx ult is going to take it. Jinx kiting away from this Mordekaiser inside the Death Realm, but can't do enough there. That challenging smite too powerful. They are going to get the Tom Kench, and it looks like we've got a... Where's the TP? Oh, the TP is the Swain. Pulling in. Set is going to use that ult there, getting some damage off here. A big W. Leona coming in for the assist, and Set is going to clean it up. That is an ace for Siaquam, while the rest of their team takes that dragon.
It looks like Set was able to do some good work with his team there. So, obviously he wasn't having the greatest time in the dueling top lane context, but of course this is a team game, and winning in team fights is what counts really in the long run. Yeah,
and if we're looking at the items and what is like coming after that fight, this is an extremely strong Xayah. Xayah just picked up that, shoot, I don't remember actually what that armor pen item is called, but the Cyrilda's Grudge.
There we go.
Picking up the Grudge and then also transforming the into the Muramana. So those are 2 pretty heavy power spikes that the Xayah is hitting at once. So that is a very strong AD carry.
I'm glad you remember the names, because I just know like old names in my head because I've been playing the game too long, and they just kind of get mixed up, and it's like, oh, is this thing called this now or that now?
Yeah, the first thing that I thought of was Lord Dominic's, and I was like, wait, no, that is the other one.
Well, back to the top side here, although the opponent in this context is Bad Woman, who's not doing too much better thus far, but he's a long game champion. We'll see what happens here.
This Tom Kench is a menace in these 1v1s. Clearly knows just how strong his champion is in those one-on-ones. And making work out of these champions. Anybody that comes up there to face him in that 1v1.
Yeah, I imagine Bad Woman is probably feeling pretty confident earlier with his plays, but Tom Kench is going to take him down a notch or 2.
Wow, Graves with some fancy footwork there, dodges the ult. is able to get out with a dash and an ult. Yeah, sneaks out of there. That was a pretty dicey situation. So good on Kempson to be able to get out of there safely.
As we have a moment here, I'd like to maybe perhaps briefly harken back to that big team fight we had on the bot side. Oh, never mind. More important.
Yeah, there's that strong Zaya. You don't watch those feathers, and suddenly your life bar is gone.
Yeah, with so much going on the map, it's just a lot to keep track of. You know, you're trying to, use your, it's something like a Graves. You're probably really thinking, I want money, but sometimes it's a bit more important to keep yourself alive.
Yeah.
Nice little route coming in there. We'll see if anything comes of this. It's always a scary prospect when a car is around with his Tam Kench.
Yeah, taking about half health off of that Mordekaiser. If he didn't have that team around, you know that Tom Kench would have chased him down.
Definitely perhaps the bright spot for Pine Tree at the moment. They're one shining beacon that may lead them towards victory, or at least a bridge to a point where the team can kind of rally around him. For the time being, still dire straits for them to a certain degree. They're not down and out by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not favoring their position at the moment too much.
Yeah, that 2-minute timer on that Ocean Drake is ticking down, and you know that Pine Tree must be feeling that pressure because if they don't get that Ocean Drake and Seaquam gets the Ocean Soul, that spells danger for Pine Tree.
Yeah. I really do like how over the years League has started to prioritize more and more these neutral objectives that are more frequent, that kind of like essentially force team fights. Or create that consideration of, well, we can't just kind of sit back forever. We can give a certain amount of ground, but at a certain point we've given up too much, sort of thing. Not quite as relevant for your average player's solo queue, I think, but definitely in these organized plays like this where people blow up.
And we are actually able to keep that Jinx alive this fight. Does get out of there, needs to burn the cleanse, burn the flash, and burn the Lulu ult. Might not be up. The cleanse and the flash definitely not going to be up for that dragon fight, but Lulu ult might be back up in time.
Looks like they're going right for Baron. I imagine they're going to kill this relatively quickly with this team. Of course, Pine Tree has something to say about this, and they are showing up in force. They got to do something quick, though, as Baron is down to half already.
Yeah, Zaya actually pretty low health, was taking the majority of the damage there, and just takes a Graves ult to the face, and that is going to be Pine Tree starting this fight off without dealing with that Zaya. Mordekaiser getting eaten by the Tom Kench. Vladimir is going to be diving into the Pine Tree team. Will do quite a lot of damage. Doesn't take out everybody. Set moving forwards is going to get low. Mordekaiser on the back line. And Pine Tree is doing it. This is going to be an ace for Pine Tree. Leona goes in. And yes, there they have it. The Baron a little bit ill-advised. This is probably going to get Dragon for them as well. That is a huge swing from Pine Tree.
Yeah, and a very unfortunate choice there. I mean, I can understand the thought process there. It's like, oh, we're in command. We can mostly do things. I think they got used to this concept of largely doing whatever they wanted around the map so long as Tam Kench wasn't there. But the thing is, when you're that far ahead, you don't need to take big risks like that. You can kind of slowly win, wait for a much easier objective like Dragon. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, and I can say things like this as the commentator, but I think in that instance, caution might have been a bit more well-advised.
Yeah, or even just making sure that it wasn't the Zaya who was in the pit taking the majority of the damage, because, yeah, you have your ADC there with 7 kills and these big items, and all it takes is that one well-placed Graves ult, and suddenly you're down a player.
So, yeah, really, it's like kind of you said, she didn't need to be down, essentially. They could have been going in with a full 5, but
and we are starting it off again with Vlad and Zaya again in the pit. We're just going to run this right back.
I can't quite see the Baron. The Baron's at about half. We can just kind of barely see its health through the bars there. Here comes Tam Kench, though.
Pine Tree not quite as well in position here. Red team is going to take that Baron. Tom Kench in the wrong side of the map is going to get taken out there.
That's an interesting case of, I don't know if I still agree with the call, but it worked out, so who am I to say anything? Very, very aggressive. It's good, decisive action. I do appreciate it. I'll certainly give Seaquam that. I appreciate the ability to simply, come up with a plan and actuate it immediately. So,
Yeah, I mean, Pine Tree was out on the map there for a while. They got the turret and the dragon after that fight, and maybe they just stayed a little bit too long, and Seaquam punishing them, taking the Baron, and starting to raise the base here.
A lot of time, really, it just kind of comes down to really decisive action. Sometimes it's just better to do something, even if it's the wrong call. Just do it as a team. Commit to something. Let the world know that you're in charge of this game, essentially. And of course, it bit them once, but team fight here.
Okay, Xayah does get hit by that Swain pull. Is going to make her way out with the ult. That Swain sitting in the front line, draining so much health off of the team. Is still holding on there at the top. Graves walking around in the Death Realm. Oh my goodness. Oh, everybody with such low health bars, but the Tahm Kench is not going to be the one that's able to clean that up. So we're waiting for another 30 seconds or so till these teammates can make it back. And there are super minions at the Nexus. So Tahm Kench is going to have to make a hero play here to be able to hold on to this game.
Everyone's so low. It's, there we go, finally.
Does get in there, but doesn't have enough damage to clean that up. Xayah is going to die there, going over to the Tahm Kench. Actually, they might not be able to take this. Oh, no, they've got the super creeps coming through. The Jinx rocket, actually, killing the Mordekaiser, getting the Jinx excited, isn't going to chase out too far.
It's an interesting fight there, resulting in not a win. Vlad just barely making it out with his puddle. But, yeah, it's a good example of people, understanding their characters to the utmost degree. When it's not a coincidence that everyone just barely makes it out like that. I know, when you're playing in solo queue or whatever, you're used to seeing is, oh, that guy is so lucky, he made it out with 10 health or, whatever. But when you see everyone doing that, it's a case of understanding most of the time anyway, that, your character is capable of doing this. I can stay this long, I can do these things, and now it's time to leave. So, well done in terms of sort of maximizing the potential of all the characters on the field by really both teams at the moment.
Yeah. If you're Pine Tree at this point, I feel like having that, yet again, that dragon timer being worrisome here. You have an open Nexus. Are you going to be safe to get out that far on the map in a minute or so to try and contest that? Or do you feel like somebody from Seaquam will just walk into your base and tap your Nexus a few times? Because that's really where their base is at right now.
Yeah, it's not a great situation no matter what you do. Sort of the classic damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of position for them at the moment. And it's about to spawn here, so the time of destiny is upon us.
Yeah, I feel like you have to go for this one, unfortunately. Not the greatest spot for Pine Tree.
Walking into a lot of unpleasant characters who are well set up and entrenched there as well. There's something to be said of a team who can actually set up and get the position beforehand as well. And obviously the team coming in can do stuff, especially if they have good vision, they can flank around and do sorts of creative things. But if a team has time to set up, especially with a team like this, it's going to be relatively difficult to dislodge them.
Seems like Seaquam knows they're denying so much of the vision around here and just waiting for Pine Tree to feel like they need to walk up. And Vladimir's going to pull the trigger here. Puts out a lot of damage onto the Graves, forces the Graves back. Ult pops, is still burning, is going to survive, but isn't going to be in a place where they have that smite for that Ocean Dragon. So this will go over to Seaquam.
Most likely. I mean, at this point, the regular dragon dies so quickly. One of the guys are blocking the missile.
Yeah, that might have been the last thing that... It looks like Xayah just soloing it. Oh, actually isn't that low. Is going to take it. Now, can you win a fight against the Ocean Soul? Starting it off by killing the Vlad is a great start.
Well, it's not a bad start for them. Of course, Pine Tree, or rather, Seaquam has ground to give, so it might be in their best interest to maybe not give up a tower here, not engage anything too hard. Just kind of take it easy at the moment. Just allow for Bad Boom to respawn, come back in, and back them up with that all-important Vladimir. It's not the kind of thing you want to go into a brawl without.
Yeah, I mean, even without the Vladimir at this point, you've got a 5-item full-build Xayah on your side with that GA at this point, and Ocean Soul and Leona Protection. It looks like even without that Vlad, they are still feeling pretty confident in moving forward, taking out the enemy jungle, and taking all the gold they can. Xayah actually being a good teammate and saying, hey, I'm full build, you guys should take some of this. Does eventually end up taking it because nobody was taking it from her, but
What a nice person. You know, always I just see 80 carries. They're full build. I'm like, I know I'm still grabbing all the farm. You know, I need to, I don't know, invest this in my retirement fund or something. I don't know what they're doing with the gold. But
They like to see the number go up.
That's why they play that role.
Mm-hmm.
So those 80 carry players, not just good junglers and support players like ourselves here.
Listen, sometimes I will take a few extra camps as our base is dying to make sure that I see my numbers go up a little bit. So I know how it is.
But meanwhile, while that's all going on, a neat little play there coming in from Siaquam, using essentially their offensive threat and just walking down the mid lane to force Pine Tree to back off and not get too much, despite the fact that Siaquam at the time was down by a player. So essentially forcing a stalemate-like situation with their team positioning when they saw Pine Tree topside.
Vladimir pretty far forward here again. Tom Kench might also be too far forward. Is going to get the Lulu ult. Is going to pop that shield, and looks like he's just going to be able to walk right out of here. Oh, a huge Swain pull. He's going to be moving forward into the fight. That Mordekaiser tanking through a lot of damage here. Is trying to take out that Swain. And it looks like they're actually going to be able to take down that Mordekaiser, but they're dealing with the rest of the team on the back end who are all regenning from that Ocean Soul. Set is going to dive in on the Jinx and take her out with that W. And the Swain, who's been draining through all of this, does end up falling. And you've got to think that that's a game.
I think that fight there really encapsulates what this game was all about. Just so much sustain, people lasting so long, especially between the Vladimir and Astrolith there on the Swain. They were there until the bitter end. And it started in a way where Akar on that Tam Kench just lasted for... He was admittedly caught out, and it wasn't a great start to the whole fight. But ultimately, Siaquam coming out with the win here for game number 1 of our best of 3.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, though, for being down 10,000 gold and fighting up against an Ocean Drake at that point, that was a pretty close fight.
No, a really good job with those skill shots that we saw. I think what really turned it around was a very nice Swain, where just kind of locked the whole team up that narrow corridor, and a bunch of AoE was able to go off as a result of that. So it's a very good sign for sort of essentially the competitive integrity of this best of 3, and I'm really looking forward to see how this shapes up and how the teams are going to adapt going forward.
Yeah, especially with the changes to that Swain route, actually being able to pull multiple people with that now, seeing that come into action. I wasn't sure how big of an impact that change was actually going to have, but seeing almost that full team in that corridor get pulled in, I got excited for that. So
yeah, it looked like they were going to win that for a second there, and that would have been a really good spot for them to really come back and do a lot of damage at that point. But we're going to have to, I suppose, wait to the next game to see Pine Tree attempt to enact that sort of damage on their rival Siaquam.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited to see what the draft is going to hold for us. I wonder if any of those picks are a little bit too much. I loved the Mordekaiser pick. I think it played out exactly how they kind of wanted it to. They kind of got those duels happening. They got the high levels of farm, and were able to just kind of walk through a lot of those fights in the early mid-game as a result.
Certainly looking forward to potentially seeing some very targeted bans and just kind of get into the headspace of how the players are going to adapt to this game.
And even from Pine Tree, now you don't have to spend 2 bans thinking that they're still going to have a jungle pick coming through, right?
Yeah.
The Kayn Diana, unless there's some crazy Kayn Diana lane stuff that I'm not aware of. But yeah, should be a fun second game, and hopefully we get 3. I want to see a close set.
Yeah. It's really entertaining watching both of these guys. So thank you very much for tuning in to the BCSS High School League of Legends Finals for the 2021 to 2022 season to decide the ultimate victors and champions. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. Trying to think if there's anything else that we should be thinking of for game 2. I'm guessing we'll probably see the same sides.
I do believe, if I recall correctly, Siaquam has the choice of it. So
interesting.
They're simply going. Yeah, well, it's really up to them. I don't know. Do people have preferences in terms of? I know I don't really care. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that some players specifically prefer one side or the other. I have an ADC friend who's just I don't play on red side. If I get red side, somebody else go bot lane, please. Just because of the camera angles and stuff. And I know that some of the pro teams prefer having one side over the other as far as pick spans, being able to get the first 2 picks in the second rotation of picks rather than getting like, last pick.
Yeah.
Just depending on team styles and stuff. But I think, yet again, I feel like that's much more preference than like one is explicitly better than the other.
I mean, in the case of your friend, maybe that's a bit unusual. It seems like a...
yes. That I don't think is coming into play here. I feel like these players are very competent on both sides.
I feel like that's perhaps a weakness that person should address. But
yes, I agree.
I suppose the bigger point is whether or not they like, first ban, pick kind of situation. And it's definitely like that is a legitimate consideration that's different from the standard League of Legends. A lot of us sort of play out there very casually. I know, like, again, personally, I don't care about bans that much. Usually I have these very spiteful specific bans that are designed to not let solo queue teammates pick specific things that I suspect they're going to feed on.
Yeah, I definitely have a few of those champs where I'm like, okay, if this champion's on my team, they're going to do very poorly. But if they're on the enemy team, I am not going to be able to deal with them.
I think the classic example of that a lot of people familiar would be like the Yasuos and the Yones mid lane. I had a bit of a weird one at the mix with Ezreal personally. I really don't like Ezreals on my team. I know, and I'm not saying Ezreal is bad, and I know people can play Ezreal well. It's just, if I don't know you, I don't know if I trust you to play that character.
Yeah, we are seeing Pine Tree getting set back up on stage here. So we will be seeing them load back into those lobbies and getting that champion select started relatively soon here. Another Y champion that I don't enjoy playing or having with on my team or playing against, the Yuumi.
Oh, yeah.
That one's definitely another hit or miss champion. Maybe it's something to do with those Y champions. It's hard to say.
No, I've definitely heard that sentiment before. The last time I was doing casting with you guys here, when you had me with the Dia, he was saying the exact same thing. As a support main, he hates playing against Yuumi. I don't. Again, I'm just weird. I know I'm an outlier. I don't mind it personally, perhaps because I find the character amusing, and I think there's a certain degree of that. When I find something funny, I don't necessarily mind seeing it in most contexts.
Yeah. But, when I can see the Yuumi on the enemy team picked before me, I love it because then I just pick Evelynn, and I'm just like, okay, I can outburst your healing. I can deal with I can sometimes even burst you through exhaust, and then if you pop out after your ADC, I get a few extra Dark Seal stacks, and that feels great. But other than that, I dislike it.
I think I just like the concept of the character personally a lot. Where it's very, I don't know. It seems like it embodies an interesting aspect of League of Legends where Riot doesn't tend to do anything too crazy or weird, or has this base kit they like to work with a lot of the time, but the nature of the character is very different because of the whole kind of attach mechanic. And I don't know, I really want to see more like strange stuff in League personally. I know it's hard to balance, but it's just a preference of mine.
So we are going to see this team swap sides here. This is going to be Pine on the red side and Siaquam on the blue side. We're seeing that Zilean ban. This is the exact same ban that Siaquam banned first in our first game here. We'll have to see what Pine bans on the other side. It is still the orange. So far, seeing those same bans.
Identical, yeah.
Yep. Have those specific those specific characters you don't want to play against. I think that's very respectable.
Perfectly fair. Yeah.
You know what you like. You know what you're good with. They are going to actually ban out that Vlad. Pine Tree saying, that was frustrating to deal with. You ignored our towers. You ignored our front line. You just went in and did so much damage. Definitely a respect ban there.
Yeah, I can't say necessarily blame him. That was a rather devastating pick. I think the only thing that managed to deal with him was one side top lane. Tamkench ate him.
Right.
But you can't rely on that all the time. Tamkench he was expected to do a lot in that game, so you can't just be considered, I'm going to shut down Vlad the whole time.
Yeah, so we're going to see the Jinx first pick again. They banned out the Xayah on the side of Pine Tree, and we're just going to see that blue side first pick Jinx again.
It seems like I'm watching the pick ban version of a set play. They know what they're doing, and they're just going to go forward with it, which I never worked out for the first time. Why not? I can't disagree with that kind of logic. And of course, they're not done yet. They might swap it up considerably, but certainly for the time being, a familiar look, unlike Aphelios here.
Yeah, that is different. Squishy in that first game playing that Jinx, and now going to be playing that Aphelios. We're seeing two of the newer champs in the game, Renata, Glask. Definitely an enabler of these hyper carries like Aphelios. And if he's able to get one of those kills after being revived by Renata, will stay alive. So that is going to be a lane that needs to get ahead and needs to get to the the later stages of the game as well.
Yeah, very interesting character. I think she's the sort of thing that benefits. I mean, most characters benefit quite a bit from organized play, but I've seen her in solo queue a few times, and just generally been disappointing. Perhaps it's a sample size issue, but I'm really looking forward to see like a dedicated supporter who knows what they're doing, playing that character and sort of timing the abilities really well. As that revive mechanic can really swing a fight.
Whereas Siaquam here on the blue side is kind of throwing down the gauntlet and saying, okay, this is pretty close to our last comp. We're going to throw that Mordekaiser jungle at you again. We're going to throw the Leona support at you again. And you're going to have to figure out how to deal with this. Jinx is going to fill the same role as Xayah, more or less. And we're going to see Rengar from Pine.
That's an interesting one there. It's a very snowball-y kind of character. Maybe not in the traditional sense, because I don't know, personally I feel like Rengar's major power spike when he's doing well is in the mid-game, as opposed to like the super hyper late game kind of snowball carry. But
I feel like it's like level 3 and then like mid-game. I feel like if anybody's going to be able to fight that Mordekaiser in the early game, it might be a Rengar.
Perhaps an adaptive strategy towards that, as of course they didn't elect to ban the Mordekaiser, and the Good Samaritan there has, it's probably going to be him in any case. I imagine it's going to be the jungle as opposed to the top side. But even though we know that, or theoretically know that, there is always still that possibility that they're going to just swap things around.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a car up there in that top lane, they just wanted to fight. They just wanted to scrap, and that Tahm Kench was definitely a character that allowed them to do that. But Rengar is kind of that sort of champion as well. You just constantly want to be scrapping with your opponent, resetting out of those bushes. So that could be a top lane as well.
Well, ultimately, I suppose we'll find out when they round out the last of these two picks here. So far, I find the Leona pick interesting, not necessarily the character itself, but sort of in terms of how it was played last game. It felt like, not to say that the character was ineffectual in the team fight. In fact, Leona was doing quite well in the team fight last game. But her real impact felt like she was just this very oppressive lane presence. I felt like the bottom side was doing quite well there. So we'll see if they'll be able to keep that one up. Lulu just really wasn't able to do anything for, I feel like, the first 10 minutes of the game as a result of that kind of very tanky shutdown pressure.
Okay, and they Sequum leaving that Zoe open this time. They hover the Zoe for a moment. It doesn't look like it's going to end up coming through here. It's actually very hard to tell where Pine is going still. That Rumble could be flexed to the top or the mid lane still. I'm guessing it's top lane, but it's really hard to tell.
That would be my guess. Yeah. I know Rumble's an interesting character. I personally, this is all for all the wrong reasons. I missed Season 2 Rumble when he was horrendously overpowered.
I feel like he somehow just gets like overtuned close to all of the world championships. Maybe not the last couple, but I really appreciate the way that he plays, and I appreciate seeing him in game. So I'm excited to watch him this match.
Yeah, it was a very unusual situation where he was. Normally people clue into the fact when something's overpowered, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, this is overpowered. We're either going to ban it all the time or going to pick it." He was an unusual case where no one knew he was overpowered. Partially because certain streamers, who I'm not going to name, were really big at the time, said this champion sucks. And everyone parroted that thought. And I'm meanwhile sitting here for half the season spamming Rumble with like a 90% win rate because it's not me. Literally, it was the character's grotesque. You couldn't stand near him and he would just annihilate you. And I don't know why people thought he was bad. Of course, this is not that Rumble. I'm just, reminiscing about the good old days. So thank you for indulging an old man at the moment. But
yeah, and we do actually end up seeing that Rumble moving towards the mid lane. Which, yeah, it's a good flex from them, being able to pull out that Malphite last pick in order to deal with that Camille. Having someone that can kind of like stand their ground a little bit against Camille, immovable object a little bit there against such a good duelist like that Camille. And then, I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of pushing out of that Rumble. Rumble in the mid is cool because you get that such strong push power out of your Q, that Flame Spitter. And then you can roam around and help your jungler. You can set up some ganks with the ultimate. Lots of cool stuff coming out of that Rumble in the mid lane.
Yeah, certainly, and it works very well with any kind of lockdown the team has. It's just because, the character just inherently works with, people who are stuck in a spot. You flamethrower them, you ult them, and a character that can definitely turn around a fight. For example, we saw earlier that what was almost a decisive fight with the Swain pulling everyone in that narrow corridor. Rumble functions in that sort of capacity very well, where everyone's just kind of stuck and it's not a case of you can always avoid fights like that, too. Sometimes you have to take fights in weird spots like that, and you have specialists who can really turn things around, even games when you're very far behind, like we saw in the last one. It's plays like that you can always count on. Well, not always, but you're going to try and count on at least.
Yeah, that's the type of character that can really turn around a game, even from a little bit behind, because those abilities like that Rumble ult are just so efficient when you're able to hit it on so many members of a team in a corridor like that. I'll ask you again at the start of this game. What do you think the keys to success for both of these teams are going to be?
I'm going to go back once again, and this is I'm repeating myself here. I'm really looking to see what the Mordekaiser does this time around. Now they don't know what he's doing because he was so instrumental through most of the game. Are they going to be able to shut him down? And if you do shut a Mordekaiser down, how is that going to be different from the Mordekaiser that was rampaging throughout the entire game?
Yeah, I think for Pine it'll be interesting to see how that bot lane goes as well. That Aphelios Renata is a bot lane that I don't even know if I've seen yet, with just how new both of those champions are. Yeah. So it'll be cool to see how that dynamic goes. And then having the Malphite in the top lane and the Rumble in the mid lane aren't super resource-intensive characters. So I imagine they'll have to, play towards that bot side if they want to see some success here.
And I suppose this goes without saying, but the Camille, that can't be allowed to get going.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's a kind of character the game is going to start to revolve around if the laning phase is too good. She just sort of gets to a point where she's got so much mobility and so much damage that your options for counterplay essentially become limited. It's almost like your counterplay is to ensure she doesn't get going. So we'll see how that one plays out. But also, as you mentioned, the bottom lane is very weird with that kind of Aphelios Renata thing. I'm not really personally sure how to assess that one. It's kind of like non-standard characters while still, firmly within their roles.
Yeah, both of those champions being relatively fragile. So yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. I do think that one answer to that Camille could, as you mentioned, be that Mordekaiser. Having the inbuilt challenging smite that's effectively an exhaust plus extra true damage. I feel like most of the time I end up playing jungle, jungle Mordekaiser. I end up being able to duel the top laners just because you have so many extra stats in your ult, and then you just you have an exhaust basically built into one of your smites, which is just so strong for those duels.
Yeah, I suppose if both those characters are going head to head, assuming everything else is equal, kind of equal farm, equal skill, equal level, essentially, I suppose. I think I do favor a Mordekaiser just sort of brute forcing into it. I mean, this prospect of a fed Camille still very much scares me.
It's terrifying.
But if everything's equal, Mordekaiser can probably just punch through that in a very basic sort of I'm bigger than you sort of sense. So.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but that Rengar is going to be still roaming around there. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Oh, sorry, the Mordekaiser and the Camille are on the same team. I'm getting the teams mixed up.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Well, that solves that problem. There. Don't have to.
Okay, so now what is your answer for the Camille besides, I guess, the Malphite? You've got a good amount of CC. You've got the Renata to kind of protect the Aphelios, but you don't have a ton to deal with that Camille.
Fed Rengar. There we go.
Yeah.
Get Rengar fed early game because he's an absolute terror in that stage. Now, again, this is solo queue considerations. Not, as relevant to this sort of organized team play, especially in the finals here. I've always found that in solo queue, Rengars get fed early, and you think that team is going to win because he's taking all the kills, and you have like a 20-3 Rengar, and then somewhere around the 30-minute mark he stops doing things. So that is, to a degree, it's still raw math that we're talking about here. So it is a consideration that Pine Tree is going to have to be paying attention to. But certainly if a Rengar is doing that well through the mid game in this sort of context, I imagine Pine Tree around him would also be doing relatively well, and they'd be able to actually take advantage of that sort of thing. So for their sake, I mean, you really want everyone fed on your team, but Rengar might be a thing to look forward to from the early to mid game.
Yeah, a few interesting things to start off here, just on the runes and items here. Bad Woman with this Galio, starting with the boots, the Predator boots, and 4 potions. Looking to get that roaming started real early here from that Galio. And then from our good friend, the Mordekaiser jungle, instead of going Ghost this game, going Smite Ignite.
Smite Ignite, all right.
Which is intense. You're going to be much better in some of these duels, but you might not be able to stick to people quite as much. Not much for gap closers on the side of Pine Tree, though. Characters, when they get inside that Death Realm, that might be a pick for that. You can't get away from Mordekaiser anyways. You may as well toss an Ignite on them and burn them down with Challenging Smite and the Ignite.
And then his teammates also have just a lot of options to lock people down for you. So just get yourself in. I feel like certainly last game there was a lot of just kind of the fights they dragged out in a long sense because of the sustain, but they didn't kind of traverse too much area. So spatially, wasn't quite as necessary to perhaps Flash. Speaking of Flash, there's 2 down right now.
Yeah, it does get that taunt out, and yeah, even through the Flash, Astrolift going to try and put out some damage there, but just too much coming out between that Mordekaiser and that Galio.
That's a lot of early CC. Yeah, I don't care who you're playing. You get locked down at level 2 that hard, you're probably going to die.
Yeah, and it was really good from the Galio as well. Was getting pushed in by the Rumble, but kind of pulled those creeps off to the side. Knew that his Mordekaiser was doing those chickens. Signaled to the jungler to, hey, he's pushed up. He has to be here. Let's just both commit to this. So first blood going over to Bad Woman.
Yeah, I don't know, just from a matchup perspective, I feel like this is, especially given that early death there, Astrolith might be in for an annoying time against Galio, who's going to probably specialize in terms of anti-AP damage. There's that Rengar jumping in.
Man, yeah, all of that early CC. Oh my goodness, the W healing for so much for Kempson. That Rengar is going to get the smite off on the crab, is going to heal quite a bit. Jumps back to the crab, is going to stay alive here. And the fight is going to stop with Rengar taking that kill. Pine Tree getting themselves on the board.
Good use of that survivability there. Barely keep himself up with the heal and the smite. So it was a good double heal here. And bottom side looking to perhaps aggress, but nothing. There was farm to be had. You can't fight during farm. These are 80 carries. So
yeah, Rengar getting quite low doing that red buff is going to be kiting it around.
That's dangerous. I think he can barely. Yeah,
yep, there he goes. Yeah, I just saw his health bar ticking down. I was like, is he going to be okay? But does manage to.
That would be such a shame, watching him do so well in that fight against other players who barely keep himself up with all these fancy moves and just gets taken out by a red buff.
Look at Bad Woman again on the Galio here. First buy with that first blood, goes back and buys Swiftness boots. So we're seeing really wanted to get around on the map, making sure that you can get the most out of that taunt because it slows you down a little bit. So yeah, definitely going to be trying to make some plays here on the map.
Not even really looking to harass. So obviously he's kind of mostly a short-range champion. But I guess we didn't really talk about the possibility of the Galio ult, which might be coming in here. He's kind of roaming bottom, looking for it, but backs off. It is a pretty impactful ult. We were discussing about major points of the game. Could even come down to a Galio ult, as it's a very hard thing to anticipate at all times. Doesn't matter how aware you are of the various factors and what's going on in the game, much like something is going on right here.
Yeah, Jinx putting down those chompers, forcing Renata to go up. Going to burn the flash out of the Leona, is going to get the E. Renata actually walking right back in towards the... Okay, it does end up getting the revive on herself, but does not get out. The Jinx getting very low in the bush here. Kempson is living, is going to take another one. So big win there for Pine Tree. I was watching the Renata walk right in, and I was like, what is going on here? And then I saw the Rengar, and I was like, oh, I see. Did get the revive out on herself, but I believe it was the Mordekaiser who who died first there.
Yeah, he went down fairly, or surprisingly. I thought he was. Oh,
we might have foreshadowed that.
yeah.
Another very clean fight from Kempson, but then yeah, you try and take that camp and you don't have that much sustain anymore.
Guys who's got the smite. Oh, he's okay.
Okay, so red team will take the dragon. Just a little bit of a trip back to base for Kempson. Not a huge worry there.
You know what came into play there that we were talking about earlier? The lack of the flash on the part of the Good Samaritan. He wasn't able to flash over the wall to steal it with a smite. Since Kempson was dead, there was no smite available. So had he have been psychic and known what was going to happen and taken flash, that could have been a potentially free dragon for them. That was a free kill for a car.
Yeah, Carr just a master of duels here, and the Galio is going to take the CC. Yeah, you may have a lot of armor, but you are not tanky to this AP damage. Moving up there from Bad Woman with that Predator.
I wonder, actually, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I wonder what happened there with Kempson dying to the dragon. It was perhaps a miscommunication with the Rumble, who should have gone in and tanked, but...
Yeah, I also saw the smite, but I don't know whether the smite had just come up when he died. Maybe he was trying to save it for the actual kill of the dragon, didn't want to burn it for the heal and then potentially have it stolen. But yeah, it's only... level 4, level 5 Rengar, you're only going to be taking a little bit of an extended recall.
Sometimes those monsters are tough, you can't sell them short.
Oh my goodness, Leona with the Hex Flash in. We are going to get the Galio ult as well. Looked like trying to make something happen, but it looked a little bit desperate. They didn't get a whole lot out of it. That Renata pushing the Leona back, having great effect there.
Did Leona use her ult in that last fight? Or
she is level 4.
Oh, right, of course.
So she most definitely did not use her ult.
It was the Galio. It looked kind of like there was this big circle. I was like, that looks weird. Why? Right, of course, Galio also creates a big circle there.
Yeah.
So.
Renata walking straight forward at this Leona very confidently. Squishy, level 6 already on the Aphelios, does have both of those good guns for the combat. Does have those shurikens traveling around now. Takes out 2. Mordekaiser's walking in. Mordekaiser does have his ult, and he ults Renata. Renata pushing him back. He is... must be pushing right to the edge of the circle there. Yeah, does eventually take down the Renata. Now, how are you going to get away with this from this Galio with the swiftness boots? He doesn't have cooldowns up, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, his taunt was used earlier, so unfortunately that was not available for him. Otherwise, that would have been a pretty unpleasant spot for Pine Tree, I imagine. Here comes Sierra, though.
This is looking a lot better for Pine Tree already.
Certainly,
I feel like you've got 2 of your win conditions, that Aphelios like starting to go now, and then the Rengar has gotten some gold with those 2 kills, 3 assists. I'm excited to see where this one goes for Pine Tree.
It's actually fairly interesting how CS is relatively even. If you kind of consider lanes across the game, CS is extremely close. Between both teams, it's probably only off by less than 10. Good even play here for the most part. Looking forward to perhaps a slightly longer one where both teams are able to show us what they can do both in the, in the early, mid, and late game.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Squishy here down in the bot lane. Is going to be farming up alone while Bamboos goes up and helps out with that Rift Herald. Leona would be one of the champions that could potentially dive a... we're actually going to see the fight between the Rengar and the Mordekaiser here. Rengar... not gonna... Ooh, is gonna get out, actually. Yeah, Renata with the, yet again, that clutch pull. And the Malphite ult at the very last second, just to make sure that that Rengar does get out safely.
Rumble's still pushing in here. We'll see if he can do anything. I don't think so. I think it's just gonna peter out, but, making his presence known, a bit of a threat.
Yeah, it's, when you're thinking about that Galio with Predator, Swiftness, Boots, and the Galio ult, it's kind of hard to match those roams, but that was really good for Master Lift, pushing out that lane and making his presence known in the bottom lane.
It was also an interesting invade earlier by Kempson there. I'm not sure. He got out of it with really fancy moves. And this is a concept I talk about sometime. When people get away with these really fancy sort of highlight plays, like, jump here, then I'm out sort of thing, I feel like a lot of highlight plays, unfortunately, are a result of needing to show off when you didn't have to in the first place. Like, you have to do something fancy to get out of a bad situation you created yourself. So it's sort of like this negative flip side to highlight plays.
Oh my goodness, that I believe that's... Oh, I used to know all the gun names. I don't anymore. The green gun, hitting that long-range Q, getting that damage out from the Aphelios, is going to get that solo kill, basically, on the low-health Minju.
Looking like he's in a bit of trouble himself at the moment. Galio coming in as well.
Yeah, Rengar was waiting in the bush there, but wasn't expecting the whole team of Seaquam. Is going to slowly make his way out there now. Going to lose the Renata as well, but it's only going to be 2 for quite a few ults used from Seaquam. That's basically their whole team's ults besides the Mordekaiser. But they will be rewarded with a few kills and that dragon, most likely.
Don't think Pine Tree is really in a place to contest this at the moment. Rumble really
in
wants
the Death
to.
Realm. Yeah, it does get some damage out. Oh, and Kempson jumps in. It looked good for a moment there, but when the Leona's the one that goes down, you're still dealing with a lot of damage for being a low health Rengar.
We're dealing with respawns. In fact, like bottom lane has actually come back. This fight has lasted so long. We'll see if this dragon is still indeed free. Position's looking pretty good given the jungler was dead. So
yeah,
Seaquam getting it.
Chomper's buying some time as well.
Nope.
Yep.
It was a very sort of unusual fight there. I liked Bad Woman's movements there, where he was kind of hovering around with his taunt, and he was seeing that one kill was secured, so he was ensuring that actually both taunts went off on, I believe he grabbed 2 people. I think it was Renata and Kempson simultaneously, and Kempson was forced to flash out as a result. And of course that flash was not available later, and he ended up dying. So one might say that sort of doing those small things in these fights lead up to situations later on. These kills don't happen in a vacuum. You have to keep creating situations and denying resources over time, and eventually you work your opposition into a point where they can't react and they don't have enough tools to deal with what you're doing to them.
Kempson walks in the lane to drop the Rift Herald. Galio just walks up, bops him on the head, walks away. It's just like, okay, you can't do any damage to me while you're dropping this. May as well get a hit in.
Good old tanks. That's why I like playing them.
Yep. Looking at the side of Seaquam, it's not the Camille who's taken off. It's yet again this Mordekaiser. First actually going Rylays for that sticking power. So maybe not needing that Ghost this game and just going with the Smite Ignite, knowing that he's going to have the stick with the Rylays.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, I feel like he can probably rely on his teammates to just start things. Geach coming in with the Leona ult, then you get on top of it, you have a follow-up potentially with Bad Woman on the Galio, and then as a sort of this tertiary engage, then you have just Mordekaiser walking in very slowly. And, once he's in, I feel like at that point, that if things have gone that perfectly, that textbook, Seaquam's going to be in a very, very good spot in any sort of fight.
Yes, definitely. So we've hit the 14-minute mark here. Plates are down. So these turrets are going to be starting to get a little bit more fragile here. Kempson is waiting in this bot lane here. So is Bamboos. I don't know whether they know that the Renata is there. But Jinx is alone under this tower, and there is a Rengar nearby. Galio is moving in here as well. They're going to get the Galio ult, but it is too late. Going to get that ultimate with the I believe that's Crescendum, the red one. Heals for quite a bit on that Aphelios, so is going to bring himself back to basically full health. Rumble ult comes out, does a little bit of damage, and the 3-person Leona ult is going to disengage that fight. That turret is still quite fragile. They're going to get pushed off of it.
Very good ult there to save the Good Samaritan's life there, most likely. I don't think he was in a very good spot until that stunned them all up. Gave him a bit of time to sort of let that CC wear off and walk out. And that was an interesting case of the Galio ult. It was kind of very similar to the principle of the Shen ult I was talking about earlier. It's not instantaneous. If you have a squishy AD carry being bared down on by an assassin, it doesn't matter if they're under a tower. It's not like the tower gives the person survivability. It's simply sort of an offensive kind of counter-answer sort of thing. So Minjum simply ceasing to exist before the support can come in from Bad Woman.
Yeah, and Rengar with this this Gore Drinker finish now is starting to get a little bit scary. He's going to be put in that place where, yeah, if you catch out that 1 in 4 Jinx, or maybe even this Camille, who still hasn't had a mythic finished yet, they're there could be some prime targets for this Rengar to pick out.
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of the Camille, it's definitely not the kind of situation I was talking about earlier where, the Camille is going to take over the game when she's doing well. This is a very sort of middling, not doing poorly, but definitely the game, it hasn't reached the point where it's revolving around the character. So, it could still happen, but time is ticking on that to a degree, I feel.
Yeah, Akara has been really impressive in both of these games from Pine Tree. I don't really expect a whole lot from a Tahm Kench or a Malphite, but both of these games just kind of like throwing it down in these 1v1s and making sure that presence is felt, even from these tanks.
It's a rock that his team can rely on, I suppose.
That's what the top lane's there for.
Just pushing in here. Game kind of quieting down for the first time in a little while here. People just kind of hovering, potentially looking to play ARAM perhaps. There is a dragon, of course, spawning in about a minute, so there is that being set up to a degree. That pull missed everyone. Looked like it was going to land on 3 people for a second there, but that last second reaction, everyone just getting out of the way.
Yeah, the Q still hurt Squishy pretty bad, but Aphelios, you've got some sustain there. Speaking of Aphelios, does just finish that cull, so there's going to be a short injection of cash there for Squishy. I'll have to see what he does with it.
Looks like Seacom is fully willing to concede this dragon. They're rotating eventually here to grab the Rift Herald. I don't know if they did it quick enough to get it for free.
Yeah, Rumble ult, Malphite ult, these are things that are very scary in these fights over these objectives. Rengar's not going to be around, but Malphite only hits on Camille. Rumble ult goes down only on Camille as well. Squishy is alone at the back, is going to go into the Death Realm. They are shooting down this Malphite, who does just flash over the wall and get the kill on the Jinx. Aphelios will end up going down to that Mordekaiser, but not without a fight. So it ends up being 3 for 3 with Seaquam taking the Rift Herald. And maybe I spoke too soon.
Did they pick it up? I don't think they did. I think it
yes, Camille has it.
Oh, you grabbed it. Okay. Just in the midst of all that chaos there. Good job.
Yes.
For a second I was worried. Like, wait, you did it, but no one... but it's all fine.
Yeah. So it was a 4v5 for the majority of that. I think Rengar got involved at the end, but coming out 3 for 3 in a 4v5 is pretty good for Pine Tree, even if they don't end up getting the Herald there.
Orisa, in the meantime, also got a good amount of damage on the top side tower. That's why he was a little bit late coming into the fight. He was obviously there earlier than Kempson on the Rengar, but they also got a little bit aside from just the Rift Herald.
Badwoman coming in with the Predator. We'll just kind of say hello and goodbye. Moves very quickly with that swiftness plus Predator. And then the Everfrost to kind of add on to that for a little bit of extra CC. Not that Galio needs a whole lot of extra CC, but it sure feels good.
It's also just amusing watching that character motor around the map like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because gargoyles are supposed to be like the sentinels that like aren't moving, and now Galio is this like literally like a motorboat. He just goes around and just cruises.
Oh, here comes the ult there, double ult.
Yeah, Camille with that Triforce now. Oh, is gonna trade. I was gonna say that Triforce power spike without having any armor or anything on Rumble, like that looked painful. But does flash under that turret and end up dying to the minions in that last tower shot.
Oh, Rengar actually killed Badwoman there surprisingly quickly. Defensive ults coming in here.
Renata ult does end up hitting the Leona, just causing her to walk towards the Jinx, which is exactly where she wants to be. Mordekaiser getting involved here, but will be severely outnumbered. Will get the Renata in the Death Realm, but will get taken down by the rest of the team. And they are in the exact right spot to just move straight to the Baron.
I don't know if that's just really unlucky in part of Seaquam or Pine Tree just next level, 5D chess, knowing they want that fight right as this is going to happen. And I believe they're going to take that for free. There's no way Seaquam's going to contest this.
Yeah, and this is scary. I imagine after a fight like that, and then getting the Baron, I'm actually very excited to see what Aphelios is going to pick up here, because that is a gold injection and a half.
I would like to once again point out that that Baron timing was literally down to the second. The team fight ended and then Baron spawned. So, I mean, I imagine to agree it's probably a combination of things where they know it's spawning, so, you know, both teams are kind of hovering. It's like, oh, well, we got to pay attention to this. And it's just, it ended up being this bloody brawl that I don't necessarily think either team really wanted per se. And it happened, but definitely Pine Tree making the most of it there.
Yeah, Felios moving away from base now. Went from Zeal and like a longsword to having the full Runins plus Vamp Scepter plus Crit Cloak. So that is a very powerful Aphelios. Already scales very well into the late game, and with these amount of items, he is going to be a terror in the next fight.
Certainly, and it looks like there's not a lot of just armor as a stat. I mean, there's bits and pieces here, but there's not a lot coming in from Seaquim, so that character is going to hurt even more.
Oh, but yeah, they jump right on top of him. Geach using that Hex Flash over the wall to start off that fight. Rumble trying to help out the team is not going to get there. They burn a few abilities there. The Galio ult on the Malphite, but he is able just to unstoppable force his way out of there.
No amount of damage can correct positioning, I suppose. So.
Ooh, Rengar with that Baron buff saying, hey, even if you're fighting my teammates, like you're gonna have to address this sooner or later. I've got powered creeps. Malphite might be caught out again here. Is in the Death Realm, can't run too far, and yeah, between the burn from Malphite's passive, or sorry, from Mordekaiser's passive, and then the slow from the Rylays, you're not getting away from that.
For a split second, I was wondering why is he standing there, and then it clicked immediately. I was like, oh, right, Mordekaiser's standing.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, I mean, Malphite's a pretty slippery character when he has that ult up. But, you know, when you burn the ult trying to get away one time, you got to be a little bit careful.
Another instance of just keep burning the resources on the enemy team and deny them options. Eventually you keep doing it, it'll add up into something important like a kill, or perhaps a dragon. Yeah.
Seaquam claiming that that objective bounty there. Rengar ult gets interrupted by the choppers. Leona quite low, though. Rengar is going to continue moving forward. Is going to get a bit of the heal from his W and the Gore Drinker. Is going to try and stay in this one. Looks like they're still kind of looking for a fight here, but I can't imagine one happens.
That was, once again, sort of impressive sustain coming out of Kempson there. Now when you think of Rengar, you know, your people are aware of his, sustain capabilities, but often it's played in a very kind of basic, the assassin, you jump in, you kill the person kind of thing, but he's been doing a very good job of jumping in and keeping himself alive, which is also, a pretty important skill for an assassin. Perhaps their primary job is to kill, but, it's a really nice secondary to not die while you're doing it.
Yeah, and very good awareness on the W as well, like when to actually press that to get the maximum amount of healing. Mm-hmm. When I play Rengar, it's definitely like, jump in and press my buttons, and then I get somebody, but I might just immediately die. But yeah, using that W masterfully in order to get the most amount of heal.
So just kind of our pressure perspective. Obviously Pine Tree is, we can talk about that later as we've got a fight here.
Yeah, Rumble is not in a great spot. Does end up getting the Renata W and reviving, but will not get a kill. So both of them will go down. The fight between Kempson and the Good Samaritan does end up just kind of petering out as they both decide to back off.
It's a very kind of strange way for this game to be playing out. I was actually about to talk about the concept of the pressure from Pine Tree just generally in most situations feels very oppressive. Like they're just kind of largely going around what they want to do. And what's really keeping Seaquam in is these strange little picks here. They almost feel like unforced errors by the part of Pine Tree, who are, it looks good when the split push is working, and even if they lose, they get a tower from the Rengar or something like that. But at the same time, it's just, this game is feeling a lot more skirmishy probably than they want it to be. I feel like they could probably push in, kind of like this, maybe not like this specifically, but that sort of idea where you kind of maybe force into them a bit more. It's going a bit pie-shaped for them there at the moment. But
they burned a lot on the Malphite. Rumble does get a good ult off there on 3. They are going to take out the Leona first. Astro is going to die in the Death Realm from the Mordekaiser there. Malphite trying to slow down this strong Mordekaiser, and they're going to let Squishy walk in with that long-range gun. And Good Samaritan knows that he is not getting away from that. Kempson is moving in here. There are still 3 in this area. Camille Alt goes down, and Kempson will most likely with it. Shutdown gold going over to Bad Woman.
Okay, yeah, can't bit off a bit more than he could chew there. I was saying, yeah, you know, I would like to see some a bit more brute force aggression. Maybe not that degree, but I like the idea.
Mm-hmm. And Pine Tree just going to reset here with the gold from some of those fights there. We got 3 items out of the Aphelios, starting to get quite scary. Jinx trailing behind a little bit.
Farming up those chicken birds, the most important objective in the game. Got to make sure the AD carry has as much money as humanly possible.
Yeah, and then also kind of want to highlight Bamboos here. Bamboos, you know, had a little bit of a tough game last time on the Lulu, but this game looking a lot nicer for Bamboos. There have been a lot of times where he's been using that Renata, I believe it's the Q. I new champion, so it's a little bit hard to tell, but the ability where you root one person, then move them into another, has been using that very, very well to set up these plays, and has looked a lot more influential than the Lulu, which is a champion that I think very highly of.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Kind of, Lulu maybe not necessarily, I don't think straightforward is the right answer for it, but more traditional, certainly. Mm-hmm. And kind of how she impacts the game is a bit more obvious, but Bamboos with this kind of weird pick has done a very good job. I've enjoyed actually seeing the character used to good effect.
And they are kind of pressuring around this Baron now here from Pine Tree. Pine Tree is just going to start it up. Aphelios with 2 pretty strong guns for fights and for healing. You can see that overshield that he's receiving both from Overheal itself and from that Bloodthirster that he's now holding on to. And the fight looks like it's starting off here.
Yeah, see if have back. They haven't taken too much damage here, so both teams are pretty good position. At the very least, they've baited out the teleport from Orisa, so that is not going to be available going forward for the next few minutes. But
yeah, no ults used yet. That Malphite Rumble combo. Ooh, they're going to pick off Bamboos. Yeah, just a little bit too far forward, and will go down very quickly. Akar. Okay, the Rumble ult goes down on 3. Lots of damage going out onto the side of Siaquam. Squishy is going to be alive. Oh, is not going to end up surviving. Even under that turret, is not safe from that Mordekaiser pull. And this is starting to look bad for Pine Tree.
Yeah, that was a really unfortunate situation there where I guess it was just a miscommunication, the team being way too strung out on essentially retreat. I mean, retreat's not even the right word. There was sort of nothing happening. Both teams sort of casually backing off, and Pine Tree backing up a little bit too casually, perhaps. You know, you kind of always got to be paying attention, especially when something like a Rengar can jump on you. There's just so much mobility, or excuse me, not a mobility. Rengar, a Camille.
Yeah. Yeah, Kempson there trying to be a little bit of a nuisance, trying to just take any amount of attention off of his crumbling base. We could actually see, no, it doesn't look like Pine Tree was going for it. I was just getting flashbacks to the first game where it was like one team, goes for the Baron, it doesn't go super well, and then, they could just go right back to it. And it looks like they're kind of going to set it up. They're not running towards it with the same conviction that Siaquam did in game 1, but looks very similar.
Yeah, very, very kind of similar situation. I also think it's perhaps noteworthy that despite how poorly that fight went for Pine Tree, Squishy's ult with I believe it was the Infernum, did a lot of damage. It nearly turned that fight around, but it was a little bit of too little too late kind of situation. So if that can get landed in a better sort of situation, it's definitely something that the fight could end up revolving around.
Yep. Squishy going to be picking up that red buff, anticipating a fight here happening. Wanting a little bit of that regen. The car ends up not... does not get his flash across that wall. Was trying to save the ult, and it looks like Bamboos and Akar going to go down.
Rengar is split pushing, but can Kempson afford to stay down there? I don't think he can. He's got a back. Another situation of just simply an unforced error. Pine Tree was looking so strong in terms of when they were clustered and forcing things, but time after time individuals are being caught out, and this may be the story of not simply the game, but the set itself.
Rumble ult is going to do quite a bit of damage. Aphelios with some of those AoE guns, this would be the team that could do it. Felios is getting chased away by the Mordekaiser in the Death Realm, is going to take him down, and the rest of Pine Tree is going to fall alongside. So Siaquam going to take this series 2-0. Very solid play.
That was very good. Siaquam, congratulations on winning this best of 3, 2-0. Capitalizing on, once again, Pine Tree individual members sort of, again, the individual people being out of position, and that ends up costing them, unfortunately. There was very good play overall from both sides, but that ended up being the difference. You can only give up that kind of situation so many times before, well, your Nexus blows up. So,
yeah. I mean, we got some good League of Legends on both teams. I was glad that we were able to highlight each of those players at least a couple of times. Yeah. Everybody kind of got their licks in, but Siaquam with the superior team play, superior, rotational play a little bit there, so good for them. All right, so we are going to be giving away the award here to Siaquam for winning the finals here, so we're going to move over to them.
All right, well, again, congratulations to our victors, and thank you very much for everyone for playing and watching. I've had a blast commentating.
All right, today. Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming here and being here tonight, and congratulations to our, I guess now, back-to-back championships after the fall win, but the BC School of Sports Spring Season League of Legends champions, Siaquam.